Hi everyone, in this short video I want to explain to you some key definitions from chapter 1, which are group, small group, and communication. Keep in mind as you go through chapter 1 the content, including the videos, the module pages, and of course the reading. This is a setup chapter. It's not too tricky, it's not too profound, but it's a setup and it's a foundation for the kinds of things you're going to be studying for the rest of the semester. So you want to have good, solid definitions. So these ones are pretty straightforward, but we need to review them nonetheless. We've got group and small group. A group we can define as it has to have these four things. So you already know it is a collection of people, right? But it's more than that. A group also they have the same purpose. So that's part of the definition of group, is that you have the same purpose or the same goals. You also have to interact with each other. You're not in a group with somebody if you have the same goal but you don't interact with them. If you've never met them, even though you have the same goal, you're not in a group with them. You also have to be able to have influence over each other. So that means that you can change each other's minds. You can change each other's behaviors. You can influence the way somebody thinks, those kinds of things. If you don't have influence over somebody, it's not really a group anymore, it's something else. And the group also has to share what we call interdependence, which means that you affect each other, your behavior affects each other. That if I do something, it also affects a member of my group. If you do something, it affects a member of your group. That's what we mean when we say interdependence. So for it to be a group, it has to be a collection of individuals, more than three or more. It has to be more than three. Two is a dyad and it's separate. It's a different dynamic. Three or more people who have the same purpose, they interact, they have influence over each other, and they're interdependent. So 4 people standing on the corner waiting for the bus, they aren't actually a group, because while they have the same purpose and they may or may not be interacting, they're totally independent of each other, rather. They don't meet this last criteria of interdependence. 4 random strangers standing on the bus waiting for the bus they don't depend on each other to survive. They just happen to be standing there. So that's not a group. Whereas 4 people working together, interacting on a team project, which is the purpose, who influence each other and share investment in the outcome, that is a group. They're interdependent. So it's got to have those things. And a group could be really, really big. I mean, a group could be 200 people, it could be 2,000 people, or it could be small. And in this class, clearly we're studying small groups. So that's 3 people to the number is in question. It's got to have at least 3. And I tell students that the general rule of thumb for what the lowest number would be is, like, if I can remember basically everybody's name and I see them as an individual with their own life story and I know a little bit about them, then I'm in a small group. But if I can't remember every single person's name and I don't know very much about, there's gotten to be so many people that I don't really have a personal relationship with each one, now it's not a small group anymore, it's a larger group. And you can see, like, if you think about a classroom dynamic, the class is going to maybe form cliques or form smaller groups than a whole class of 30 people, because 30 is too many to be a small group, but it's probably going to divide itself up into smaller groups naturally, because that's just part of human behavior. So a small group is the specific type of group you're studying in this class, and it's 3 or more people who are in a group, who meet that first definition and also can understand that the people in the group are individuals. So you could think about this like, if you were taking this class face-to-face, there'd be 30 students in the class. You probably wouldn't really get to know everybody in the class well enough to have an individual personal relationship and know them pretty well. So 30 is too big to be a small group. But your smaller groups with 5 or 6 students, that there you're going to know those people fairly well. You're going to have a personal relationship with them. They're going to be seen as individuals. So there's no hard and fast line about when that number changes. It's probably somewhere between 8 and 15, 16. It'd probably be pretty hard to have a small group that was any bigger than 15 or 16. But again, there's no hard and fast rule, because you could probably think of a sports team that is technically more of a small group. Last two definitions, communication and small group communication. So communication is, you probably have an idea of what it means, but you don't have a definition. A transactional process where people are creating, interpreting, and negotiating meaning while they're interacting. So transactional means an exchange. I give you something, you give me something. Ideas, meaning, messages, words. That's what I'm that's the transaction. And during that exchange, that transaction of words and ideas, or even nonverbal signals frequently, we are creating and interpreting what people mean, and you're negotiating it together. So just yesterday I ran into a friend of mine, and we had a nonverbal communication exchange where someone else in the same room said something, and we looked at each other in the eyes, and that's all I needed to see. We both had both had masks on at the time, so all we had was eyes, and we looked at each other, and I knew immediately that look meant we're leaving this alone, and no words had to be said, but we negotiated and interpreted, and actually we talked later when no one else was around, and yes, I knew immediately what that nonverbal signal was telling me, but we negotiated and created that in that space, right? It happened like that. It wasn't like that happens to us all the time. So you're always interpreting somebody else's meaning, and you're always, it's a process of negotiation. It doesn't always mean the same thing every single time. And then small group communication is that stuff within the context of a small group. So with 3 to 10 people, or 3 to 12 other people, you're having the specific kinds of interactions. And at that number of a small group, 3 to 12 or 3 to 15, whatever the top part is, you get certain types of dynamics that are different than between two people. That's why 2 people is not a group, it's a dyad. It's a totally separate relationship, different type of relationship. And if I get too many people in there, then also new dynamics emerge. So you might think about times when you've been to, I don't know, a meeting or an event where there's 100 people there. The interaction is completely different with that many people in the room than it is with 8. But then if it's just you and one other person, that's a much different interaction too. So 4 quick definitions for you to be familiar with, and please move on to the next video.